Hello, and welcome to the review of the Food Handler Safety course provided by Texas Best Food Services Training. Behaviors associated with foodborne illness and foodborne outbreaks. Foodborne illness occurs because of food contamination and can be biological, chemical, or physical in origin. Biological contamination includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. Chemical contamination includes cleaners, sanitizers, and polishes. Physical contamination includes metal shavings, staples, bandages, glass, dirt, fingernail polish, and natural objects such as bones in a fillet. Foodborne illness usually occurs because of one or more of the following factors. Poor personal hygiene. Employees must effectively clean their hands, exposed arms, under their fingernails, and if they have them, prosthetic devices on hands or arms, and wear clean clothing and aprons at all times when around food. Time and temperature abuse. Food handlers must be aware of potentially hazardous food, or PHF, being particularly careful in cooking those foods known to cause severe borne illness and death, such as shell eggs and comminuted or powdered or pulverized meat. They must monitor cooking temperatures, use appropriate temperature measuring devices that have been scaled and calibrated properly, and use proper methods to rapidly cool potentially hazardous foods that are not held hot or are not for consumption within 4 hours. Temperature control. Temperature can be used to control the growth of harmful bacteria in food. The danger zone is the range of temperatures between 41 degrees and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, where bacteria grow very quickly. You must avoid having foods in the danger zone. When heating or cooling foods, the foods must pass through the danger zone quickly. Cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is a leading cause of foodborne illness and is the transfer of harmful bacteria to food from improperly handled cutting boards, utensils, and from other foods. When handling raw meat, poultry, and seafood, keep these items separate and their juices away from cooked or ready-to-eat foods and fresh fruits and vegetables. Reportable illnesses. Food handlers must report to their employee or person in charge if they are diagnosed with one of the following illnesses, or if they suspect they may have one of the following illnesses, or have been around anyone that has one of the following illnesses, or has eaten at a place that later reportedly had an outbreak caused by one of the following illnesses. Norovirus, which is caused by fecally contaminated food and water. Hepatitis A virus, which is caused by fecally contaminated food and water. These two are viruses. As such, they're easily airborne and very contagious. Salmonella, caused by undercooked beef, eggs, and poultry. Shigella, which is a bacteria contained in human feces. And Escherichia coli, or E. coli, which is a bacteria contained in both human and animal feces. Can you see a pattern here? Most of this is caused by fecally contaminated food and water. Probably the best source is improper hygiene, or when an animal is slaughtered, the fecal matter becomes contaminated with the food, or from insects such as flies, which bring it to the food. But probably the main cause is food handlers. These are known as the Big Five. Food handlers must also report to their employer or person in charge if they have symptoms caused by illness, infection, and other sources that is associated with acute gastrointestinal illness such as vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, sore throat with fever. You may wonder, how do I know if I have one of these Big Five illnesses? Best bet is whenever you're ill, feel ill, or are vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, sore throat with fever, go report to your employer the symptoms that you have and let them help you decide what to do, whether you should go to the doctor or not. They should also report to their employer if they have a lesion containing pus, such as a boil or infected wound that is open and draining. We don't want that stuff in our food. On the hands or wrists, unless an impermeable cover, such as a finger cot or stall, protects the lesion, and a single-use glove is worn over the impermeable cover. On exposed portions of the arm, unless the lesion is protected by an impermeable cover, or on other parts of the body, unless the lesion is covered by dye, durable, and tight-fitting bandage. Hands and arms cleaning procedure. How? Food employees shall use the following cleaning procedure. Vigorous friction on the surfaces of the lathered fingers, fingertips, and areas between the fingers. Hands and arms, or by vigorously rubbing the circuit prosthetic devices for hands or arms for at least 10 to 15 seconds, followed by thorough rinsing under clean, warming water, immediately following the cleaning procedure with thorough drying of the clean hands and arms or surrogate prosthetic devices using individual disposable towels or a continuous towel system that supplies the user with a clean towel or a heated air hand drying device. Fingernail maintenance. Food handlers shall keep their fingernails trimmed, filed, and maintained so the edges and surfaces are cleanable and not rough. Unless wearing intact gloves in good repair, a food handler may not wear fingernail polish or artificial fingernails when working with exposed food. Jewelry prohibited and outer clothing. While preparing food, food handlers may not wear jewelry, including medical information jewelry, on their arms and hands. This does not apply to a plain ring, such as a wedding band. Eating, drinking, or using tobacco. An employee can only eat, drink, or use any form of tobacco in designated areas where the contamination of any of the following cannot result: exposed food, clean equipment, utensils, and linens, unwrapped single-service and single-use articles, or other items needing protection. A food handler can have a drink as long as it is a closed beverage container that is handled to prevent contamination of the employee's hands, the container, or exposed food, clean equipment, utensils and linens, and unwrapped single-service and single-use articles. Discharges from the eyes, nose, and mouth. Food employees experiencing persistent sneezing, coughing, or runny nose that causes discharges from the eyes, nose, or mouth may not work with exposed food, clean equipment, utensils and linens, or unwrapped single-service or single-use articles. Hair restraints. Food handlers shall wear hair restraints, such as hats, hair coverings or nets, beard restraints, and clothing that covers body hair that are designed and worn to effectively keep their hair from contacting exposed food and clean utensils and linens, or unwrapped single-service or single-use articles. Special procedures for barehanded contact with ready-to-eat food. Except when washing fruits and vegetables, food handlers may not contact exposed ready-to-eat food with their bare hands. They must use suitable utensils such as deli tissue, spatulas, tongs, single-use gloves, or dispensing equipment. Food handlers shall minimize barehanded contact and arm contact with exposed food that isn't in a ready-to-eat form. The main reason for not touching ready-to-eat foods with bare hands is to prevent viruses and bacteria which are present in our body from contaminating the food. Viruses and bacteria are not visible to the naked eye, but may be present on your hands if you do not wash them thoroughly. Another good idea is to cough in your arm rather than in your hand. That helps prevent any viruses that may be present from being on your hands. Methods of sanitization. Sanitization can be accomplished through several means. Hot water by manual immersion for at least 30 seconds in water that is at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit. A chlorine solution of between 50 and 99 parts per million in water that is at least 70 degrees for 10 seconds. An iodine solution of 25 parts per million for 30 seconds in water that is at least 70 degrees. Now, this is not what the TFER, Texas Food Establishment Rules, says about the strength of chlorine solution sanitizers in iodine solution. In the TFER, they're defined as so much milligrams per liters and at a certain pH. I'm sure you can figure that out, but I've never gone through all that. The test kits I get, we use chlorine solution. In the test kits, you take out a little strip, dip it in the water, pull it out, and compare the color of that strip with a chart which is on the side of the bottle. And that measures the chlorine in parts per million. Where I got this 50 to 99 was through study of the food manager's exam. Actually, one of the questions on the 75 questions of the food manager's exam is what should be the chlorine sanitizing strength, and the right answer is 50 to 99. I don't know where they got that, but I'm sure it has a basis if that's what we food managers are taught. Add little by little to your sanitizer and check it each time. It's really easy to overdo it, which creates a chemical hazard. 3 compartment sinks. You have a sort table, a wash table, a rinse table, and a sanitizer table, sink rather, and an air dry table. The wash sink should be sudsy and relatively clean. The rinse sink the water should be pretty clean, no suds or dirty looking. And the sanitized sink should definitely be clean looking. I've never had a health inspector ask me for my sanitizing tester strip, but they can. So these must be kept somewhere. I think the reason I've never been asked is because I keep my sinks in shape. The wash sink looks right, sudsy and not too dirty. The rinse sink looks right, clean, and the sanitizer sink looks clean. If it didn't, I'm sure an inspector would ask me some embarrassing questions about it, and then probably go talk to my boss about it, and maybe we'd get a violation, and then I'd be in trouble. So keep your sinks in shape. Definition of potentially hazardous food. Potentially hazardous food, or PHF, means a food that requires time and temperature control for safety, or TCS in order to limit pathogen growth or the production of toxins. Potentially hazardous food includes the following: an animal food, fresh egg cells, raw or heat treated; food of plant origin, heat treated or the food consists of raw seed sprouts; cut melons; garlic and oil mixture that is not treated in such a way to prevent harmful growth of pathogen or the production of toxins; food whose pH-AW interaction is designated as PHF TCS unless product assessment or vendor documentation acceptable to the regulatory authority is provided. The higher the pH or more alkaline a food is, the more likely it is to be a PHF TCS food. The higher the AW or wetter a food is, the more likely it is to be a PHF TCS food. Hot foods, except when being prepared. Potentially hazardous food should be maintained at or above 135 degrees Fahrenheit. The exception is that roasts cooked at proper time and temperatures or reheated may be 130 degrees. Cold foods. Refrigerated potentially hazardous foods must be stored at 41 degrees or less, unless another temperature is specified by law. Milk and mollusk and shells have their own rules. If you have these, find out what must be done to them. Potentially hazardous food must be received at less than 41 degrees. Eggs, 45 degrees. Unless otherwise noted, any potentially hazardous food that is cooked, cooled, or reheated for the purpose of hot holding must be heated to a temperature of 165 degrees. It must also reach this temperature in the microwave. Ready-to-eat food that is commercially processed and in a hermetically sealed container or from an intact package from a food processing plant that is regularly inspected must be heated to at least 135 degrees. Raw animal foods, eggs, fish, meat, poultry, and foods containing these must be cooked to heat all parts of the food to a temperature as follows: 145 degrees for raw shell eggs cooked for immediate service, and fish, meat, pork, and all game and exotic animals if they have been commercially raised. 155 for injected meats and a few rarities, and comminuted fish, which is ground up fish, ground meat, game animals and exotic animals commercially raised under that subsection, and exotic animals under a voluntary inspection program raised under that section. If they have been, I'm sure they will be labeled that way. And raw eggs for other than immediate service. 165 degrees for poultry, and wild game and exotic animals, stuffed fish, stuffed meat, stuffed pasta, stuffed poultry, or stuffings that contain these products. I think that one of the reasons 165 degrees needs to be used for poultry is because during the slaughtering process it's usually difficult to keep the fecal matter from contaminating the meat. E. coli dies in 160 degrees. That's fine. We cook poultry to 165 degrees. Or one of the reasons. A raw animal food such as raw eggs, fish, raw marinated fish, raw molluscan, shellfish, steak tartare, or partially cooked foods such as lightly cooked fish, soft cooked eggs, rare meat that is not whole muscle or intact beef, may be served or offered for sale in a ready-to-eat form if the customers are not usually in the highly susceptible population, which is people with things like AIDS and elderly and young people, and the customer is informed of this and the food is cooked as specified. Frozen food must be stored and maintained as frozen. Potentially hazardous food that is slacked to moderate the temperature must be held under refrigeration at 41 degrees or less, and the food remains frozen. This means don't lay it on the counter and let it thaw. Potentially hazardous foods should be thawed under refrigeration that maintains the food's temperature at 41 degrees or less, or completely submerged under running water. This water must be 70 degrees or less, have enough flow to agitate and float off the loose particles, and for a period of time that does not allow any thawed portion to be greater than 41 degrees. Time as a public health control and potentially hazardous food. Unless otherwise specified, if time only, rather than a combination of time and temperature controls, is used as a public health control for a working supply of potentially hazardous food before cooking, or for ready-to-eat potentially hazardous food displayed or held for service for immediate consumption, the following rules apply. Food must be marked or identified in order to indicate when 4 hours have passed since the food has been removed from time and temperature controls. Food must be cooked and served. Served if ready to eat, or thrown away when this 4 hours time frame has passed. Food in unmarked packages or containers must be thrown away. Written procedures that are followed by the food establishment concerning the procedure must be available to the regulatory authority. Time-only controls may not be used for the highly susceptible population or for raw eggs. Raw animal foods freezing. Freezing food destroys parasites, so raw fish is able to be used for human consumption. Before it can be in a ready-to-eat form, raw marinated, partially cooked, or marinated partially cooked fish, excluding molluscan shellfish, must be frozen and stored at a temperature of -4 degrees Fahrenheit or below for 7 days, or frozen at -31 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 hours. Certain species of tuna, such as yellowfin, bluefin, and bigeye, may be served or sold in a raw marinated, or partially cooked, ready-to-eat form without freezing. And that ends our review. Click to the link below and we'll take you to your certificate. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this course provided by Texas Best Food Handling Services.